The night was so cold that Daniel could see his breath forming little clouds inside his car, even with the heater running. It was almost midnight, and he was driving home after another long shift at the community hospital where he worked as a nurse. The streets were empty, covered in a thin layer of ice that made everything look shiny under the streetlights. Daniel was tired. Bone tired. The kind of tired that makes your shoulders ache and your eyes burn. He had 2 kids waiting at home, probably already asleep by now. His mother had been watching them, like she did every night he worked late. Being a single dad wasn't easy, but he was managing. Barely, but managing. He was thinking about tomorrow's breakfast, wondering if they still had enough eggs when something caught his eye. At first he thought it was just a bag of trash someone had dumped behind the old grocery store. But then it moved. Daniel slowed down, his heart suddenly beating faster. He squinted through the darkness, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. There, huddled next to a large metal dumpster, was a small figure. A person. A child. Without thinking, Daniel pulled his car over and parked. He grabbed his phone and turned on the flashlight, stepping out into the freezing air. The cold hit him like a wall, making him gasp. How could anyone survive out here? As he got closer, he could see her more clearly now. A young girl, maybe 11 or 12 years old, curled up in a ball. She was wearing a thin jacket that looked about 2 sizes too small, and her jeans had holes in the knees. No gloves, no hat. Her dark hair was tangled and dirty, hanging over her face. The girl looked up as Daniel approached, and he saw pure fear in her eyes. She tried to scramble backward, but her movements were slow and clumsy. She was shaking so badly that she could barely move. Hey, it's okay," Daniel said softly, holding up his hands to show he meant no harm. "I'm not going to hurt you. I promise." The girl didn't say anything. She just stared at him with wide eyes, like a trapped animal looking for an escape route. Daniel knelt down slowly, keeping some distance between them. Up close, he could see that her lips had a bluish tint to them. Her face was pale, almost gray. These were signs he recognized from his work at the hospital. This girl wasn't just cold. She was dangerously cold. The kind of cold that could kill you if you stayed out too long. "My name is Daniel," he said, keeping his voice calm and gentle. "What's your name?" The girl's teeth were chattering so hard she couldn't speak even if she wanted to. She pulled her thin jacket tighter around herself, but it didn't seem to help at all. "When did you last eat something?" Daniel asked, still no answer. The girl just kept staring at him with those haunted eyes. Daniel looked around the empty parking lot. There was no one else here. No other cars. No open stores. Nothing but darkness and cold. He thought about his own kids, safe and warm at home. He thought about what would happen if this girl stayed out here all night. She might not make it until morning. "Listen," Daniel said, taking off his own winter coat. The cold immediately bit into him through his scrubs, but he didn't care. "You can't stay out here. It's too cold. You'll freeze." He held out the coat to her, but the girl didn't take it. She just looked at it suspiciously, like it might be some kind of trick. "Please," Daniel said. "Just take the coat. You don't have to trust me, but at least take the coat." After a long moment, the girl's shaking hand reached out and grabbed the coat. She wrapped it around herself quickly, and Daniel saw a tiny bit of relief cross her face as the warmth surrounded her. "That's good," Daniel said, trying to smile even though his own teeth were starting to chatter now. "That's really good. Now I need you to listen to me carefully, okay? I work at the hospital down the road. I'm a nurse. I have 2 kids at home. I promise you I'm not a bad person." The girl watched him carefully, still not speaking. "I can't leave you out here," Daniel continued. "I just can't do it. But I also can't force you to come with me, so I'm asking you, as one human being to another, will you please let me help you? Just for tonight. Just to get you warm and fed. After that, we can figure out what comes next." The girl's eyes filled with tears, but she blinked them back quickly. Daniel could see her struggling with the decision. Trust him or stay here? Risk going with a stranger or risk freezing to death? "I know you don't know me," Daniel said quietly. "I know you have no reason to trust anyone. But I swear to you, all I want to do is help. That's it. Just help." The minutes stretched out. Daniel waited, shivering in the cold, letting her take all the time she needed. He didn't rush her. He didn't pressure her. He just waited. Finally, the girl spoke. Her voice was barely a whisper, rough and cracked like she hadn't used it in days. "Why?" Just one word, but it carried so much weight. "Why would you help me? Why would you care? Why would anyone stop for a homeless kid in the middle of the night? Daniel thought about his answer carefully. Because someone should, he said simply. Because you're just a kid and you shouldn't be out here alone. Because if my own daughter or son were in your situation, I'd hope someone would stop for them. The girl studied his face for a long time, searching for something. Daniel didn't know what she was looking for, but he hoped she found it. Come with me, Daniel said softly, standing up slowly and holding out his hand. Please, just come with me. Another long pause. Then so slowly it almost hurt to watch, the girl reached out and took his hand. Her fingers were like ice, so cold they almost burned to touch. Daniel helped her stand up and she wobbled unsteadily like her legs had fallen asleep. There we go, Daniel said, supporting her weight as they walked slowly to his car. Just a few more steps. You're doing great. He opened the passenger door and helped her inside, then cranked the heat up as high as it would go. The girl sat there still wrapped in his coat, still shaking, but at least she was out of the wind. Daniel got into the driver's seat and started the engine. He looked over at this mysterious girl who had just trusted him with possibly the biggest decision of her young life. Thank you, he said quietly. Thank you for letting me help. The girl didn't respond. She just stared straight ahead as Daniel pulled out of the parking lot and headed toward home, toward warmth, toward safety. Neither of them knew it yet, but this cold December night was about to change both of their lives forever. As they drove through the empty streets, Daniel made a mental note to call his friend who worked with social services in the morning. But tonight, right now, all that mattered was getting this girl somewhere warm. Everything else could wait until tomorrow. The car ride home was quiet except for the hum of the heater working overtime. Daniel kept glancing over at the girl in the passenger seat, worried about how still she was sitting. She hadn't said a word since getting in the car, just stared out the window at the dark streets passing by. When they pulled into the driveway of Daniel's small house, he saw the living room light was still on. His mother was probably waiting up for him like she always did. He took a deep breath, suddenly realizing he had no idea how to explain the situation. We're here, Daniel said gently. This is my house. My mom is inside and my 2 kids are probably asleep upstairs. Nobody is going to hurt you here, okay? The girl looked at the house, then back at Daniel. He could see the fear creeping back into her eyes. I know this is scary, he said, but I promise you're safe. Come on, let's get you inside where it's warm. They walked up to the front door together, and before Daniel could even get his keys out, the door swung open. His mother, Patricia, stood there with a worried expression that immediately turned to shock when she saw the girl. Daniel, what on earth? She whispered, her eyes wide. Mom, I'll explain everything. Can you just help me get her warmed up first? Patricia looked at her son, then at the shivering girl wrapped in his coat, and her grandmother instincts kicked in immediately. Of course. Come in, sweetheart. Come in out of that cold. Inside, the house was warm and smelled like the cookies Patricia had probably baked with the kids earlier. The girl stood in the entryway, looking around nervously like she was ready to run at any moment. Let me get you some hot chocolate, Patricia said, already heading to the kitchen. And we need to get you out of those wet clothes. Daniel, go grab some of Lily's pajamas. Over the next hour, they worked together to help the girl. Patricia ran a warm bath while Daniel found clean clothes. His daughter Lily's pajamas would be a little big, but they'd work for now. When the girl emerged from the bathroom, her hair was clean and her face had some color back in it. She looked so young and small in those oversized pajamas. Better? Patricia asked, handing her a steaming mug of hot chocolate. The girl nodded slightly, wrapping her hands around the warm mug. It was the first real response they'd gotten from her all night. What's your name, honey? Patricia asked gently. The girl hesitated, looking between Daniel and his mother. Finally, she spoke in that same whisper voice from before. Riley. Riley. Patricia repeated with a warm smile. That's a beautiful name. Are you hungry, Riley? When did you last eat? Riley shrugged, but her eyes drifted toward the kitchen. That was answer enough. 20 minutes later, Riley was sitting at the kitchen table with a plate of scrambled eggs, toast, and fruit in front of her. Daniel and his mother watched as she ate slowly at first, then faster, like she was afraid the food might disappear. Slow down, sweetheart, Patricia said gently. There's plenty more if you want it. No need to rush. After Riley had eaten, Daniel showed her to the guest room. It was small and simple, but it had a comfortable bed and warm blankets. Riley stood in the doorway, not moving. This is for you, Daniel said, for tonight at least. The bathroom is right across the hall. If you need anything, I'm in the room at the end of the hallway. My mom sleeps downstairs on the couch when she stays over. Riley nodded but still didn't move. Riley, Daniel said softly, I know you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I don't really know either. But tonight you can sleep without worrying. You're safe here. For the first time, Riley looked directly at him and Daniel saw tears forming in her eyes. She quickly looked away and stepped into the room, closing the door quietly behind her. Downstairs, Patricia was waiting with her arms crossed and about 1,000,000 questions written all over her face. Mom, before you say anything, that child was half frozen to death, Patricia interrupted. You did the right thing bringing her here. But Daniel, what's the plan? Who is she? Where are her parents? I don't know, Daniel admitted, running his hands through his hair. I found her behind the grocery store on 5th Street. She was just sitting there in the cold. I couldn't just leave her. Of course you couldn't, Patricia said, her voice softening. But you know we have to call someone. Child services, the police, somebody. I know. I will, tomorrow. Tonight she just needs to be warm and safe. Patricia nodded, then pulled her son into a hug. You have a good heart, Danny, just like your father did. But this situation is complicated. You know that, right? Yeah, Mom, I know. That night Daniel barely slept. He kept listening for sounds from the guest room, worried that Riley might try to run away. Around 3 in the morning, he heard a noise and got up to check. The guest room door was open, and Riley wasn't in the bed. His heart pounding, Daniel rushed downstairs, only to find Riley sitting on the kitchen floor with the refrigerator door open, stuffing food into the pockets of her borrowed pajamas. Riley, Daniel said quietly, trying not to startle her. She jumped anyway, spinning around with guilt and fear written all over her face. Crackers and cheese fell out of her pockets onto the floor. I'm sorry, she said quickly, backing up against the counter. I'm sorry, I just thought I didn't mean to. Hey, it's okay, Daniel said, holding up his hands. You're not in trouble. You can eat whatever you want. You don't have to hide it. Riley looked confused. Really? But can I ask why you're putting it in your pockets? Riley looked down at the floor. In case I have to leave. It's good to have food saved up. You never know when you might need it. Daniel's heart broke a little. This wasn't just a kid who was hungry. This was a kid who had learned to survive on the streets, who had been let down so many times that she couldn't trust that food would be there tomorrow. Come here, Daniel said, sitting down on the kitchen floor. Sit with me for a minute. Riley hesitated, then slowly sat down, leaving several feet of space between them. I'm not going to ask you where you came from or what happened to you, Daniel said. That's your story to tell when you're ready. But I want you to understand something. While you're in this house, you don't have to hide food. You don't have to hoard supplies. There will always be breakfast, lunch, and dinner, always. Do you understand? Riley stared at him like he was speaking another language. Why are you being nice to me? Because you deserve kindness, Daniel said simply. Because you're a kid and kids deserve to feel safe. You don't even know me, Riley whispered. Not yet. But I'd like to, if you'll let me. They sat in silence for a moment, then Riley spoke again. I've been on my own for 3 months. Before that, I was in foster care. 4 different homes in 5 years. The last one was bad. Really bad. So I ran. Daniel felt anger rising in his chest, but he kept his voice calm. I'm sorry that happened to you. Nobody should have to go through that. The system doesn't care, Riley said bitterly. They just move you around like packages. Nobody really wants you. That's not true, Daniel said. I stopped my car tonight, didn't I? Riley looked at him with those haunted eyes. Yeah, but you'll change your mind. They always do. Once they realize I'm too much trouble, they give up. I'm not them, Daniel said firmly, and I don't give up easy. The next morning, Daniel woke up to find his 2 kids, Lily and Ben, standing in the hallway outside the guest room, whispering to each other. Dad, Lily whispered loudly. There's someone in the guest room. Who is it? Before Daniel could answer, the guest room door opened, and Riley stepped out, looking terrified at the sight of the 2 curious kids staring at her. Good morning, Daniel said, stepping between them. Lily, Ben, this is Riley. She's going to be staying with us for a while. Riley, these are my kids. Lily is 10 and Ben is 8. Hi, Lily said brightly. Are you Dad's friend? Riley didn't answer, just looked at Daniel for help. Riley needed a place to stay, Daniel explained. So I invited her to stay with us. I want you both to make her feel welcome, okay? Okay, Ben said, shrugging like this was the most normal thing in the world. Do you like pancakes? Grandma makes really good pancakes. And just like that, with the simple acceptance of children who hadn't learned to judge yet, Riley took her first step toward becoming part of the family. It wouldn't be easy, and there would be many hard days ahead. But for the first time in a long time, Riley felt something she'd almost forgotten existed. She felt hope. The first few weeks with Riley in the house were harder than Daniel had expected. Much harder. He'd called his friend Tom, who worked with Child Protective Services, and after a lot of paperwork and home visits, they'd agreed to let Riley stay with Daniel as a temporary emergency placement while they figured out a long-term plan. But having Riley there wasn't like having a guest. It was like trying to help someone who didn't want to be helped. Riley barely spoke unless spoken to directly. She'd eat meals with the family but never looked anyone in the eye. At night, Daniel would hear her pacing in the guest room, unable to sleep. Sometimes he'd find her sitting on the floor of the closet, like she felt safer in small enclosed spaces. School was even worse. Daniel enrolled Riley in the same school as Lily and Ben, hoping that being around other kids her age would help. Instead, Riley got into a fight on her third day. A boy had made a joke about her worn-out shoes, and Riley had shoved him so hard he'd fallen backward into a locker. Daniel had to leave work early to pick her up from the principal's office. Riley sat there with her arms crossed, refusing to apologize, refusing to even look sorry. "Riley, you can't just push people," Daniel said in the car on the way home. "He was making fun of me," Riley shot back. "I know, and that wasn't right of him, but violence isn't the answer." "Yeah, well, sometimes it's the only answer people understand," Riley muttered, staring out the window. Daniel gripped the steering wheel tighter, feeling frustrated and helpless. He didn't know how to reach her. Every time he thought they were making progress, Riley would pull away again, pushing him back. The tension in the house was affecting everyone. Lily had started asking why Riley was so mean all the time. Ben had become quiet and withdrawn, not understanding why this new person in their home seemed so angry. Patricia tried to help, but even her gentle grandmother approach seemed to bounce off Riley's walls. "Maybe this isn't working," Daniel's brother Kevin said one night when he stopped by. "Maybe she needs professional help that you can't give her." "I'm not giving up on her," Daniel said firmly. "I'm not saying give up. I'm saying maybe you're in over your head. You've got your own kids to think about." Daniel knew Kevin meant well, but his words stung because part of Daniel wondered if he was right. Was he being selfish, trying to save Riley when his own family was struggling? The breaking point came 3 weeks after Riley had arrived. Daniel came home from work to find Patricia upset in the kitchen. Lily was crying in her room, and Riley was nowhere to be found. "What happened?" Daniel asked. "Riley took money from Lily's piggy bank," Patricia said, her voice tight with disappointment. $40 that Lily had been saving for months. When I asked Riley about it, she denied it at first, then just ran out of the house. Daniel felt his heart sink. He checked Riley's room and found her backpack missing, along with some clothes. She'd run away. He spent the next 4 hours driving around the neighborhood, checking every place he could think of. The park, the library, the grocery store where he'd first found her. Nothing. It was getting dark, and Daniel was starting to panic. What if something happened to her? What if she was hurt? Finally, he remembered something Riley had mentioned once in passing. She'd talked about a park with a big oak tree where she used to sleep sometimes. Daniel knew exactly which park she meant. When he got there, he found her sitting under that oak tree, her backpack beside her, crying silently in the dark. "Riley," Daniel said softly, approaching slowly like he had that first night. "Go away," Riley said, wiping her eyes quickly. "Just leave me alone." "I can't do that," Daniel said, sitting down on the ground a few feet away from her. "Why not?" "I'm a thief. I steal from little kids. I'm exactly what everyone always said I was. Just trash." "Don't say that about yourself," Daniel said, his voice firm. "You're not trash. You're a hurt kid who's trying to survive the only way she knows how." "I took Lily's money," Riley said, her voice breaking. "She was so nice to me, and I stole from her. What kind of person does that?" "Why did you take it?" Daniel asked. Riley was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I thought you were going to kick me out." I thought if I had money saved, I could get food and find somewhere to sleep. I was just trying to be prepared. What made you think I was going to kick you out? Everyone always does eventually, Riley said, fresh tears rolling down her cheeks. I mess everything up. I'm too angry, too difficult, too broken. People get tired of trying. Daniel felt something shift inside him. He moved closer to Riley and did something he'd been afraid to do since she arrived. He pulled her into a hug. Riley stiffened at first, her body rigid with surprise. But then slowly she started to cry. Really cry. Not the silent tears she'd been holding back, but deep, painful sobs that shook her whole body. She cried for everything she'd lost, for every home that hadn't worked out, for every adult who'd failed her. And Daniel just held her, letting her cry it out. He didn't try to make her stop or tell her it was okay. He just let her feel what she needed to feel. When the tears finally slowed down, Riley pulled back, embarrassed. I'm sorry, she said. For what? Daniel asked. For crying. For stealing. For being so much trouble. Riley, look at me, Daniel said. When she finally met his eyes, he continued. I'm not going to kick you out. Not today, not tomorrow, not because you took some money or got in a fight at school. Do you understand? I'm not going anywhere, but why? Riley asked, the same question she'd asked that first night. Why do you care? You know what I realized tonight while I was looking for you? Daniel said. I was terrified. Not because you took money from Lily's piggy bank, but because I thought something might have happened to you. Because in these 3 weeks, even with all the hard moments, you've become part of this family. My kids ask about you at breakfast. My mom bought you that purple sweater because she noticed you looking at it in the store. We care about you, Riley, all of us. I don't know how to be part of a family, Riley admitted. I've never really had one. Then we'll figure it out together, Daniel said. But you have to stop running every time things get hard. And you have to talk to us when you're scared or angry, instead of keeping it all inside. Riley nodded slowly. I'll try. I don't know if I'll be good at it, but I'll try. That's all I'm asking, Daniel said. Now come on. Let's go home. And tomorrow you're going to apologize to Lily and figure out how to pay her back. I know, Riley said quietly. They walked back to the car together, and on the drive home Riley spoke again. Daniel? Yeah? Thank you for coming to find me. For not giving up? Always, Daniel said. I'll always come find you. When they got home, the house was still awake. Lily was sitting on the couch with Patricia, and Ben was supposed to be in bed but was peeking down from the stairs. Riley walked up to Lily, looking nervous. I'm sorry I took your money. It was wrong and I want to pay you back. I don't have money now, but I can do chores or whatever you want. Lily looked at her dad, then back at Riley. Can you help me with my math homework instead? I'm really bad at fractions. Riley looked surprised. That's it? That's what you want? Well, you could also play video games with Ben sometimes. He always wants someone to play with, Lily added with a small smile. Riley's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were different. Okay, I can do that. That night something changed in the house. It wasn't perfect and there would still be hard days ahead, but Riley had learned something important. She'd learned that running away didn't solve anything and that maybe, just maybe, there were people who would keep showing up for her even when she messed up. For the first time since arriving, Riley slept through the whole night without waking up afraid. And downstairs, Daniel finally allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. Things got better after that night under the oak tree, but better didn't mean easy. Riley was trying, really trying, but years of hurt and abandonment didn't just disappear overnight. Daniel had to take on extra shifts at the hospital to cover the costs of another person in the house. Riley needed clothes, school supplies, and eventually a counselor to help her work through her trauma. Money was tight, tighter than it had ever been. Some nights Daniel would sit at the kitchen table after everyone was asleep, looking at bills and trying to figure out how to make everything work. But the hardest part wasn't the money. It was the whispers. Daniel started noticing it at the grocery store, at parent-teacher conferences, even at church. People would look at him differently, then lean in to whisper to whoever they were with. He knew what they were saying. A single man taking in a teenage girl who wasn't related to him? People had questions. Some had accusations. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel's neighbor, Mrs. Chen, stopped him while he was getting the mail. Daniel, can I ask you something? She said, her voice low and concerned. That girl living with you, is that really appropriate? I mean, you're a single man and she's not your daughter. Daniel felt his jaw tighten. Riley is in my care legally through child services. She needed a safe place to stay. I'm sure your intentions are good, Mrs. Chen continued, but people are talking. They're saying it doesn't look right. Have you thought about what this might do to your reputation? To your own children? What it does, Daniel said firmly, is show my children that we help people who need help. That's all the reputation I care about. Mrs. Chen shook her head and walked away, but Daniel stood there feeling angry and hurt. He was trying to do the right thing, and people were making it into something ugly. It got worse when Riley had an outburst at school again. This time, a teacher had accused her of cheating on a test because her grades had improved so much. Riley, feeling attacked and misunderstood, had yelled at the teacher and stormed out of class. The school called Daniel, and when he arrived, the principal suggested that maybe Riley needed to be in a special program for troubled kids. She's not troubled, Daniel said, trying to keep his voice calm. She's traumatized. There's a difference. She needs support, not isolation. Mr. Hayes, the principal said, looking at him over her glasses, I understand you're trying to help this girl, but you need to think about the other students too. Riley's behavior is disruptive. She's been through more in her 12 years than most adults face in a lifetime. Daniel shot back. Maybe instead of punishing her, we should be trying to understand her. The meeting ended badly, with the principal giving Riley a 3-day suspension. On the drive home, Riley sat in silence, staring out the window. I messed up again, she finally said. Yeah, you did, Daniel agreed. But we'll work through it. Maybe everyone's right, Riley said quietly. Maybe I am too much trouble. Maybe you should just let them put me in one of those group homes. Daniel pulled the car over to the side of the road and turned to face her. Is that what you want? Riley shrugged, but he could see tears forming in her eyes. It doesn't matter what I want. It matters what's best for you and your kids. You are one of my kids now, Daniel said, and what's best is that we stick together and figure this out. All of us, but the pressure kept building. Daniel's boss at the hospital called him in for a meeting about all the time he'd been taking off for Riley's school issues and counseling appointments. Some of his extended family members started suggesting that he was neglecting Lily and Ben by focusing so much on Riley. Even his brother Kevin, who usually supported him, seemed worried. Danny, I love what you're trying to do, Kevin said one evening. But you look exhausted. You're working yourself to death, your kids barely see you anymore, and the whole neighborhood is talking. Is it really worth it? Daniel wanted to scream that yes, it was worth it. That Riley's life was worth fighting for. But he was so tired and the doubt was starting to creep in. What if he was being selfish? What if he was hurting his own children in his attempt to save Riley? The situation reached its breaking point when Tom from Child Services showed up at the house with unexpected news. He looked uncomfortable as he sat down at the kitchen table with Daniel. We found Riley's mother, Tom said carefully. Daniel felt his stomach drop. Her mother? She's been in a rehabilitation program for the past 8 months. She's clean now, has a job, and she wants to see Riley. She's asking for another chance. Riley, who had been listening from the stairs, came down slowly. Her face was pale. My mom? Tom nodded. She's made a lot of progress, Riley. She really wants to try again, to be the mother she should have been. Daniel watched Riley's face, trying to read her emotions. She looked shocked, confused, and something else he couldn't quite identify. Fear, maybe. What does this mean? Daniel asked Tom. It means we need to evaluate whether reunification with her biological mother is in Riley's best interest. We'll set up some supervised visits, see how it goes. After Tom left, Riley went straight to her room and closed the door. Daniel gave her some space, but an hour later he knocked softly. Can I come in? Yeah, Riley's voice came from inside. She was sitting on her bed, hugging her knees to her chest. Daniel sat down beside her. How are you feeling? He asked. I don't know, Riley admitted. I thought about my mom a lot when I was on the streets. I wondered if she ever thought about me, if she missed me. But now that she actually wants to see me, I'm scared. Scared of what? What if she's only doing this because she feels guilty? What if she tries again and then gives up like before? What if I go back to her and it doesn't work and then I've lost this? Riley gestured around the room. I've lost you and Lily and Ben and Patricia. Daniel put his arm around her shoulders. Riley, nobody is taking you away right now. These are just visits to see how you feel about it. You get a say in this decision, do I? Riley looked up at him with those big, scared eyes. Because in my experience, kids like me don't really get a say. Adults decide what happens to us. Not this time, Daniel promised. Your feelings matter. Your voice matters. The first visit with Riley's mother, Christine, was scheduled for the following week at a supervised facility. Daniel drove Riley there, and she was quiet the whole way, her leg bouncing nervously. "Do you want me to come in with you?" Daniel asked as they pulled into the parking lot. "Would you?" Riley asked quickly. Of course, inside Christine was already waiting. She stood up when she saw Riley, and Daniel could see the emotion on her face. She looked different than he'd expected. Older, tired, but there was something hopeful in her eyes. "Riley," Christine said, her voice breaking. "You've grown so much." Riley didn't move toward her mother. She just stood there, frozen. "Hi," Riley said finally, the word barely audible. The visit was awkward and painful to watch. Christine tried to make conversation, asking about school and what Riley liked to do. Riley gave short, careful answers, never fully relaxing. When Christine reached out to touch Riley's hand, Riley pulled back instinctively. "I'm sorry," Christine said, tears rolling down her face. "I'm so sorry for everything I put you through. I was sick and I made terrible choices, and you paid the price for my mistakes." "Okay," Riley said, not knowing what else to say. In the car afterward, Riley was quiet again. Daniel didn't push her to talk. He just drove, letting her process everything at her own pace. Finally, Riley spoke. "She seemed different." "Different how?" Daniel asked, sadder. "More real, I guess. When I was little, she was always either really high or really angry. Today, she just seemed like a regular person." "How do you feel about seeing her again?" Riley took a long time to answer. "I don't know. Part of me wants to believe she's changed. Part of me wants to give her another chance. But another part of me is so angry at her for all the years she wasn't there, for all the times I needed a mom and she chose drugs instead." "Those are all valid feelings," Daniel said. "You don't have to figure it all out today." Over the next few weeks, Riley had 3 more visits with Christine. Each time she came home quiet and confused. Daniel could see her struggling, torn between the mother she'd always wished she had and the family she'd found with him. One night, Lily found Riley crying in her room. "What's wrong?" Lily asked, sitting down on the bed. "Everything," Riley said. "My mom wants me back, but I don't know if I want to go. I don't know what I want at all." "Do you want to know what I think?" Lily asked. "What?" "I think you're scared that if you choose us, you'll feel guilty. And if you choose your mom, you'll feel scared. But maybe you don't have to choose right away. Maybe you can just see what feels right." Riley looked at this 10-year-old kid with surprise. "When did you get so smart?" Lily shrugged. "I don't know. But I do know that whatever you decide, you'll still be my sister. That doesn't change." Those words hit Riley harder than anything else. Sister. Someone had just called her sister. The custody hearing was set for a month away. Riley would have to tell a judge what she wanted. And for the first time in her life, Riley actually had a choice. The question was, what would she choose? The day of the custody hearing arrived on a cold morning in late February. Daniel stood in front of the bathroom mirror, adjusting his tie for the 3rd time. His hands were shaking. In just a few hours, Riley would have to stand in front of a judge and decide her future. Patricia came up behind him and put her hand on his shoulder. "Whatever happens today, you did a good thing, Danny. You gave that girl hope when she had none." "What if she chooses her mother?" Daniel asked quietly. "What if after everything she decides to go back?" "Then you support her decision," Patricia said firmly. "Because that's what love does. It lets people choose their own path, even when it breaks your heart." Downstairs, Riley was sitting at the kitchen table, still in her pajamas, staring at a bowl of cereal she hadn't touched. Lily and Ben sat on either side of her, unusually quiet. "You should eat something," Lily said softly. "I'm not hungry," Riley replied. "Are you scared?" Ben asked with the blunt honesty of an 8-year-old. "Yeah," Riley admitted. "Really scared." "It's going to be okay," Ben said, reaching over to pat her hand awkwardly. "No matter what happens." Riley looked at this little boy who had somehow become her brother and felt tears prick her eyes. How did this happen? How did she go from being alone in the cold to having people who actually cared about her? At the courthouse, Christine was already there with her lawyer. She smiled at Riley, but it was a nervous smile. She looked just as scared as Riley felt. Tom from Child Services approached Daniel and Riley in the hallway. "Okay, here's what's going to happen. The judge is going to hear from both sides, look at the case files, and then Riley, you'll have a chance to speak. The judge will ask you what you want. What if I don't know what I want? Riley asked, her voice barely a whisper. Then you tell the judge that, Tom said kindly. There's no wrong answer here, Riley. This is about what's best for you. Inside the courtroom, Riley sat between Daniel and Tom. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone could probably hear it. Christine's lawyer spoke first, talking about how Christine had completed her rehabilitation program, had been sober for 10 months, had a steady job at a grocery store, and had a small apartment ready for Riley. Ms. Foster has worked incredibly hard to turn her life around, the lawyer said. She's proven that she's ready to be the mother Riley deserves. Blood is important. Family is important. Riley belongs with her mother. Then Daniel's lawyer spoke. He talked about how Daniel had provided Riley with stability, safety, and a loving home. He mentioned Riley's progress in school, her relationship with Lily and Ben, and how she'd started to heal from her trauma in Daniel's care. Mr. Hayes has shown remarkable dedication to Riley's well-being, the lawyer said. He's given her something she's never had before, a real home. To uproot her now would be devastating. The judge, an older woman with kind eyes and gray hair, listened to everything carefully. Then she looked at Riley. Riley, I'd like to hear from you now, the judge said gently. This is your chance to tell me how you feel about all of this. Take your time. Riley stood up on shaky legs. She looked at Christine, who was crying quietly. Then she looked at Daniel, who gave her an encouraging nod. Then she looked at the judge. I don't really know how to say this, Riley began, her voice trembling. For a long time I was so angry at my mom. Angry that she chose drugs over me. Angry that I ended up in foster care. Angry that I had to learn to survive on the streets when I should have been home doing homework and playing with friends. Christine let out a sob, covering her mouth with her hand. But then, Riley continued, I met Daniel. He found me when I was freezing behind a grocery store, and he didn't have to stop. He didn't have to bring me to his home. He didn't have to fight for me when I pushed him away. But he did. He showed me what it means when someone actually shows up for you. Riley paused, wiping tears from her own face. These past few months with Daniel and his family have been hard. I've messed up a lot. I've gotten in fights at school. I've stolen money. I've run away. But Daniel never gave up on me, not once. His kids, Lily and Ben, they treat me like I'm their real sister. His mom, Patricia, she makes me feel like I'm important, like I matter. The judge nodded, listening carefully. My mom says she's changed, Riley said, looking at Christine, and I believe her. I can see that she's trying really hard. Part of me wants to give her another chance because she's my mom, and I've always wanted a mom who could take care of me. Christine's face lit up with hope. But, Riley continued, and her voice grew stronger, I've learned something important these past few months. Family isn't just about blood. It's about who shows up. It's about who's there when you're scared in the middle of the night. It's about who helps you with your homework, even when you're being difficult. It's about who sees you at your worst and still chooses to stay. Riley turned to look directly at Daniel. Daniel gave me that. He and his family gave me something I didn't even know I needed. They gave me a home. Not just a place to sleep, but a real home where I feel safe and wanted and loved. Daniel was crying now, not even trying to hide it. I'm sorry, Mom, Riley said, turning back to Christine. I'm really sorry, but I want to stay with Daniel. I want to stay with my family. The courtroom was silent except for the sound of Christine crying. The judge looked at Riley with respect. Riley, that took a lot of courage to say, the judge said. I want you to know that your voice matters here, and I've heard you loud and clear. The judge took a moment, looking at her papers, then at Christine, then at Daniel, and finally back at Riley. After reviewing all the evidence and hearing Riley's testimony, I'm going to grant legal guardianship to Daniel Hayes. However, the judge added, looking at Christine, I'm also going to allow supervised visitation twice a month so that Riley and her mother can continue to build a relationship. Ms. Foster, you've made remarkable progress and that shouldn't be ignored. But Riley needs stability right now, and she's found that with Mr. Hayes. Riley felt her knees go weak with relief. Daniel stood up and wrapped his arms around her, and Riley hugged him back tighter than she'd ever hugged anyone. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never, Daniel whispered back. I'll never give up on you. Across the courtroom, Christine stood with her lawyer, tears streaming down her face. Before they left, Riley walked over to her. I'm sorry, Riley said again. Christine shook her head. Don't be sorry. You chose what was best for you, and that's what I want. That's what a mother should want. She reached out and touched Riley's face gently. I'm proud of you. And I'm grateful to Daniel for being there when I couldn't be. Can we still do the visits? Riley asked. I'd like that, Christine said. I'd like that very much. Outside the courthouse, Lily and Ben were waiting with Patricia. When they saw Riley and Daniel coming out, they ran forward. So? Lily asked anxiously. What happened? I'm staying, Riley said, and suddenly she was laughing and crying at the same time. I'm staying with you guys. Lily let out a whoop and threw her arms around Riley. Ben joined in. And soon they were all hugging in a big pile while Patricia and Daniel watched with tears in their eyes. That evening, the whole family gathered around the dinner table. Patricia had made Riley's favorite meal, spaghetti and meatballs. As they ate and talked and laughed, Riley looked around at these people who had become her family. 6 months ago, she'd been alone in the cold, convinced that nobody cared whether she lived or died. Now she was here, surrounded by people who loved her, people who had fought for her, people who had shown her what family really means. Hey, Riley, Ben said, interrupting her thoughts.
Want to play video games after dinner?
Yeah, Riley said, smiling. I'd like that. Later that night, Daniel knocked on Riley's bedroom door to say goodnight. She was sitting on her bed, looking at a framed photo Lily had given her. It was a picture of all of them at the park, taken just a few weeks ago. They all looked happy. Big day, Daniel said, sitting down beside her. Yeah, Riley agreed. Daniel, yeah? In the courtroom today, I called you my family. I meant it. You're more than just the guy who took me in. You're my dad, if that's okay to say. Daniel felt his throat tighten with emotion. It's more than okay. It's perfect. Riley smiled, and for the first time since Daniel had met her, it was a smile without any fear or sadness behind it. It was just pure happiness. And 2 years later, Riley stood in the living room on her 14th birthday, looking at the banner that said, Happy Birthday, Riley Hayes. Daniel had officially adopted her 6 months earlier, and she'd taken his last name. She was on the honor roll at school, played on the soccer team, and volunteered at a youth shelter on weekends, helping other kids who'd been through what she'd been through. As everyone sang happy birthday, Riley thought about that cold night when a stranger had stopped his car and said, Come with me. She thought about how close she'd come to giving up, to believing she didn't matter, but she did matter. She mattered to this family who had chosen her, who had fought for her, who had shown her that sometimes the family you find is just as real as the family you're born into. And as she blew out the candles on her cake, surrounded by the people she loved most in the world, Riley made a wish. Not for herself, but for all the other kids out there in the cold, alone and scared. She wished that someone would stop for them too. That someone would see them and say those magic words, Come with me, because everyone deserves a family. Everyone deserves to be loved. Everyone deserves a chance at home.